Welcome back to another week in review. We're looking at the week of February 10th, 2025. We're going to look at the S&P 500 futures as well as the NASDAQ futures as we normally do. A couple things to get out of the way this week. It's data packed again like we had last week. So things to be aware of really quickly. We have Tuesday, 10 a.m. Powell testimony to Congress. That's the first part of the testimony is happening on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. We have earnings after hours on Tuesday as well. SMCI is reporting. That's the only one that's really impactful. It might have some impact in the semi sector, so something to bear in mind on that. Wednesday morning, 8:30, we have consumer price index. So that'll be market moving. That'll be very important. We need to look at how Fed swaps are going to move as that print comes out. Then 10 a.m. again, we have the continuation of Powell's testimony, I think in front of the Senate on Wednesday. Can't remember if it's the Senate or Congress, which one goes first, but in any case, that's at 10 a.m. And then we have the 10-year note auction, at 1 p.m. on Wednesday, so I'd pay attention to that. Thursday morning, 8:30 a.m., PPI and jobless claims, as well as the 30-year bond auction at 1 p.m. on Thursday, so that's important. I would take note of those. After hours on Thursday, we do have coin reporting, so interesting sector, just to see, how they're doing as far as the crypto sector. So I'll keep an eye on that. I wouldn't expect the market to move on that, but it's just something interesting. And then Friday morning, 8:30 a.m., we have retail sales, as well as a Fed speaker at 3 p.m. We have a couple of Fed speakers throughout the week at different times, but I'm just trying to point out the primary things to pay attention to going into this week. So I would take a look at the Market Watch calendar, not of the Forex Factory or both, just so you have all these things and note them as we go into the week, which I always put together. So keep in mind of all that stuff. Starting with the S&P 500s, we're looking at ES, we're looking at the 30-minute chart. What a wild week last week. If you had told me that we were going to gap down, 100 plus points last week and then rally it all back up, basically doing the exact same thing that we did the week before, I never would have believed you going into last week. It was insane. And it seems like it's impossible to liquidate this market in regular trading hours, but it's also impossible to buy it up as well in regular trading hours, because we get, a decent move back up from those lows, and then Friday comes around and the sell regime up into balance highs takes over again, and we nuke on Friday. So pretty much, it's almost a mirror image of what we did the prior week. So bearing any gap down that we have on Globex, it's 3 p.m. Eastern time here in Toronto. So obviously Globex isn't open yet. So hopefully we don't have a repeat of last week, or maybe we do, who knows? And then we can, buy the lows, sell the highs again. We'll see. So crazy week. Going into this week, because of all that data, again, we have to be pretty neutral. Last week I went into it with a sell side bias. Definitely was. I would say I wasn't really right about that. It seemed like I was right, obviously, going into the week prior, going into the beginning of last week. Obviously we had a major gap down. Friday's close the previous week here was extremely weak, and the gap down was pretty well telegraphed that it was coming on Monday. So this made sense to me, buying it all the way back up, and then basically, a really nasty, grindy, slow trend higher the rest of the week. Kind of threw me for a loop a little bit with how messy this was intraday. So I think the easiest way to look at it is, last week, even with the liquidation, and only in Globex, even with the liquidation, we held the gap. So we held the regular trading hours gap, and we broke back above the old daily balance range, which was at 59.96s. So we broke back above it, and then we tried to test the top of balance the preceding days. So really nasty move higher. I did fine last week. I definitely missed a lot of opportunities, especially, trying to hold more of a sell side bias last week was not the move. Obviously, I was definitely wrong in trying to have any type of bias at all last week. And, about pretty much on Thursday, I figured that out. And I was like, okay, I can play both sides of this. And then Friday came around, and obviously we liquidated, and we caught a bit of points there. So the big things I'm looking at this week, we closed Friday settlement dead center of current daily balance. So ES is in a balance daily, weekly, and monthly balance range right now. The daily balance range high is 61.62, and the low is 59.50 that we set on Monday right here. So this is the high, this is the low. We're literally dead center. We are 50% dead center of balance right now, sitting on the 20-day and sitting on the 50-day moving averages. So objectively looking at this, I'm going into this week with basically zero bias. I'm going to use this mid-range. I'm going to use last week's POC, which is conveniently 6,050 as well. I'm going to use this POC as the gauge and basically say, if we can find buyers above, I'll be looking to take out certain levels up here. So I'll be looking to take out or at least test 60, 70s, test 78s into IB high, and then hopefully try and grind back up and test the 93 to 6108s area. And then I have a pivot set here, same pivot as last week as 6108s. And again, I think we only really see an acceleration on tape if we can start really accepting above 6108s. And at that point in time, I'd look for the move back up into the current highs of the balance range. I think 6108 still. So to go back and talk about the importance of this was the breakaway. This was 2 breakaway points. So we started the sell on the last liquidation move. We started the sell right in here at 6108s, and then we did it again at 6108s the following week. And then again, if you look at it last week, 6108s again, once we lost that level, we liquidated again. So we're only really going to find acceptance on a move higher if we can get bids above 6108s. That's the way I'm going to look at this. So if we can find buyers above this, I think we can see a really nice accelerated move. And my guess is that we would actually break away from this balance range and we can start talking about levels higher if we do see that. But that's going to be the primary reference point as far as on the high side. 6108s, obviously last week's high is at 23s, but I think if we're finding buyers above this, I think this is when we break. The flip side to that is that if we can't find a bid down into Friday's low, so 6,040, basically down into 6,030. So basically, if we can't find a bid into this low, which saw extremely heavy absorption all day and no ability to liquidate further, if we see this snap and if we can't keep this area down in here into 6,032's bid, we're going to see, I think, in my opinion, a pretty quick move down into 6,008s, basically testing the upper distribution of Monday's value that broke us away. So we'll see. It's also last week's value area low. So we'll see this area get tested, in my opinion. If this breaks, then I think we do finally get a chance to liquidate back down, and we'll test the gap at 59.50s and at least down into the 100-day moving average again, down into 40s. So basically, from a simplicity standpoint, we're dead center of balance. If we can break away to the upside, there's levels up in here in Friday's value that we can look for in the immediate trade. And then we really accelerate, in my opinion, if we actually get buyers above 6108s. If we can't hold basically down into 6,030s, then 6,008s is where I'm going to look. And then if this snaps, I think we liquidate this entire range down back into 59.50s into last week's low, down into 40s in the 100-day moving average, and potentially we go further. We might backfill this gap if we see that. So I'm not holding my breath for that because this market has been unkillable basically, but I think there'll be signs pretty quickly, if we do see some initiative selling and continuation selling below 6,000s right here. So keeping that simple, NASDAQ is the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing I talked about last week as well. My primary reference point on NASDAQ was 21,660s to 21,700s. The way that I was looking at this is that sellers want to keep this below, buyers obviously want to break this over. So using that logic again, I think is how I'm going to look at this week. We saw a lot of absorption again into the low on NASDAQ, down into 21,600s, 620 to 600s. Looked like it formed a decent low. We ended up closing below it. The POC for the week went to 21,650s. So again, I think the simplest way to look at this is that if we can start finding buyers back above the pivot I was using before, so 21,650, 660 to 700, if we can start finding acceptance back above this, then I'll look to see if we can backfill the velocity gap that we put in on the data print. The velocity gap is literally just a frame of price that didn't trade essentially. So the move was so fast from that data print Just give this a second to load. The move was so fast on that data print that we just basically skipped a solid point of price right here. So we have no volume traded in here. We basically just ran this straight down. So we'll look to see if we can backfill this, if we can get above 700s, which is, goes into about 840 to 870s. That'll be what I'm looking for. And then if we start getting acceptance back above this, then we'll look for the move back to 21,100s. So the difference in the NASDAQ is we actually did sweep last week's high, or the week prior's high, and then that's when we started the failure. So ES has been setting consecutive lower highs on the weekly. NASDAQ actually swept it, and then obviously still failed, but a little bit of a different look. But again, both are still dead center of balance. So we're dead center balance. I can't hold a ton of bias in this range. I just basically need to play this day to day, and you know, take what comes. The order flow Friday, to me, it looked like the market wanted to put in a low. That's how I would look at it. So we had a heavy amount of absorption. The bid was stacked with a lot of size all day Friday, especially on ES. Kept restacking, kept filling. We didn't have a lot of drive away. We closed into the lows, and we didn't put in a lot of excess. So that's the counter argument to, you know, Friday's low, not putting in a decent low. So I'm just going to take this as it comes. I think from the downside perspective, if we find initiative sell it again back into 21.7, then the rotation down to 430s, which is likely rotation down into 430s. And then if we snap 430s, I think we're going to go down to this naked POC down here into 21.200s, down into last week's regular trading hours low. So that's the move I'll look for. Look to test the bottom of balance. The other thing that I noted too on Monday was an enormous buyer in the ETH session was down here at 21,000 flat basically. So we put in an enormous amount of size down here on this liquidation break lower. We haven't tested it in regular trading hours. Generally, when I see size like that coming in Globex, I usually want to see it tested in regular trading hours, and I think that would eventually come if we snap under 400s. So if we start snapping 21,400s, I think the move down really is going to be into this naked POC, and then potentially as low as 21K to test the seller, which is also right around where the 100-day moving average is right here too. So that's really it. Trying to keep a really open mind this week. Again, like if we start accepting above 21.8s, we start accepting above 61.08s on ES, that's when I think there's potential for this range to break to the upside. Not holding my breath for anything this week. It's really just going to be, play the ranges as they develop, as they're given. We've had an enormous amount of opportunity. Even with it being incredibly messy, we've had an enormous amount of opportunity on both sides of the tape. So not trying to hold a strong bias into this week. Really going to see how this range starts to form on Monday and just kind of go from there. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't. I'd appreciate that a lot. Like to see some more people subscribe to this, just to have motivation to keep doing it. I do make these videos for myself, and I just recently put them public. So if people enjoy them, if they find that helps, just click the button. It'd be nice, and I'll keep making them public. I'm gonna make them regardless, but for me to keep putting them public, it would be nice to see if there's interest. So hopefully that helps. Thanks for your time.